1 week before Knebworth, Freddie Mercury said something to John Deacon during an argument. Brian May overheard it. He did not take it seriously. He has spent nearly 40 years thinking about that. The argument was small, the kind of minor disagreement that accumulates across any long tour. The kind that bands in their second decade together have learned to absorb without lasting damage. What Freddie said to end it was not small. He said, "I'm not going to be doing this forever. This is probably my last time." Brian May heard the sentence. He processed it as the kind of thing Freddie said at the end of a long tour, the exhaustion speaking, the physical depletion of months on the road, finding its way into words. He did not ask what Freddie meant. He did not follow the sentence to where it was pointing. He heard it, absorbed it, and let it go the way you let things go when you have known someone for 16 years and have learned to distinguish between the things they say that require attention and the things they say that are simply the sound of the day. That sentence, it turned out, required attention. Brian May has said this across 30 years. He did not give it the attention it required. He has been living with that ever since. The summer of 1986 was, by the external measure of every commercial and critical indicator available, the best period of Queen's career. A Kind of Magic was at #1 in the UK. The Magic Tour was selling out stadiums across Europe with a speed that the band's promoter, Harvey Goldsmith, described as unprecedented. The demand for tickets exceeded what could be accommodated. The show itself, the production Queen had built for the Magic Tour, was the most elaborate and expensive of their career. A stage design that incorporated elements of the Fritz Lang Metropolis aesthetic, lighting rigs of a scale that required specialist engineering, a set that transformed any arena or stadium it occupied into something that felt purpose-built for Queen specifically. They were, by every available measurement, at the height of their powers. And Freddie Mercury was ending arguments on the tour bus by saying, "This is probably my last time." 2 weeks before Knebworth, Queen had played in Budapest their first concert in Hungary, a show at the Népstadion that made them the first Western rock band to play a major stadium concert in a communist country. The concert had been extraordinary, 100,000 people behind the Iron Curtain, the band's music carrying a weight in that context that neither they nor the audience had fully anticipated. After the concert, a journalist asked Freddie Mercury whether he would return to Budapest to play sometime in the near future. His answer was brief and strange. He said, "If I'm still alive." The journalist did not press further. The quote appeared in a Hungarian newspaper and circulated in the limited way that quotes in Hungarian newspapers circulated in 1986, before the internet existed to amplify them. In the years since, it has been retrieved from that limited circulation and placed in the context of what happened after. "If I'm still alive," said in August 1986. 1 month before Freddie Mercury's AIDS diagnosis was confirmed by a London doctor. "If I'm still alive." That was Budapest 2 weeks before Knebworth. "I'm not going to be doing this forever. This is probably my last time." That was the argument with John Deacon 1 week before Knebworth. Brian May overheard the second sentence. Nobody heard the first in the context of the second. Nobody put them together until it was too late to ask what they meant. And then Knebworth happened, and Freddie Mercury walked off the stage, and the tour ended, and a year later the diagnosis was confirmed, and the two sentences sat in the record of that summer and waited to mean what they meant. The Knebworth concert of the 9th of August 1986 was the last night of the Magic Tour and the last concert Queen ever played with Freddie Mercury. 120,000 people at Knebworth Park in Hertfordshire, the largest paying audience Queen had ever performed for in England. The show was everything the Magic Tour had been: the production, the set list, the specific quality of connection between Freddie Mercury and a crowd that the Magic Tour had produced night after night across Europe. He arrived by helicopter. He wore the yellow leather jacket. He performed with the full energy and the full commitment that everyone who saw him that summer has described as extraordinary, even by the standards of someone who had spent 20 years performing at an extraordinary level. He led the crowd through the vocal exercises. He sang every song the way it needed to be sung. And at the end, in the crown and the gown that he wore for the final encore of every Magic Tour show, he said goodnight in sweet dreams and walked off the stage for the last time. Coming off the stage at Knebworth, Freddie Mercury said something that Brian May has reported across various interviews since. He said, "I can't fucking do this anymore. My whole body's racked with pain. Brian May's response was to absorb it in the same way he had absorbed the sentence about not always being there, as the sound of exhaustion rather than something requiring urgent attention. Freddie normally said things like that at the end of a tour, Brian May has said. He said it with the specific honesty of someone acknowledging, in retrospect, that he applied a filter to what he heard, a filter built from 16 years of knowing Freddie Mercury, of knowing his tendency toward dramatic expression, of knowing the difference between what he said in exhaustion and what he meant in the literal sense. The filter was wrong. What Freddie Mercury said coming off the stage at Knebworth was both the exhaustion of a touring musician and something more than that. Brian May's filter let through the first part and missed the second. He has been aware of this for nearly 40 years. Peter Hintz, Queen's roadie, said something in his memoir that Brian May has never quite said directly. He said, "At Knebworth, I somehow knew it was going to be the last show for all of us." He had no knowledge of Freddie's health condition. He said this explicitly. He just knew. The person who had known Freddie Mercury for 16 years and who heard every sentence through the specific interpretive filter of that knowledge he did not know. The roadie who was not inside the band's inner world in the same way knew. Sometimes the person who is farthest from something sees it most clearly. After Knebworth, Freddie Mercury did not stay for the backstage celebration. He left quickly by his own account and by the accounts of the people around him. He went almost directly from the stage to the transport that would take him home to Garden Lodge in London. This is not how the end of a major tour normally goes. The end of a major tour produces the specific release of sustained tension that takes the form of celebration, the backstage gathering, the company of the people you have been through something with. Freddie Mercury had always participated in this. He had hosted the parties, the dinners, the gatherings that marked the end of tours across the years. At Knebworth, he did not participate. He went home. The people who knew him well enough to notice this noticed it. The people who knew him well enough to ask about it did not ask. And he landed at Garden Lodge and the summer ended, and what he was carrying, whatever he was carrying, went with him into the private space of the house, where it would remain for another year before becoming something that had to be said out loud. The formal diagnosis, the private meeting at Mountain Studios in Montreux, at which Freddie Mercury told the other three members of Queen that he had AIDS, came in October 1987, more than a year after Knebworth. In that year, Brian May has described across various accounts, there were signs. The recording sessions for The Miracle had a different texture from previous sessions, not in the music itself, which was as demanding and as excellent as anything Queen had made, but in the specific quality of the working environment. There were signs that the filter, the one built from 16 years of knowing Freddie Mercury, and from the specific tendency of people who love someone to interpret ambiguous signals in the most manageable direction, continued to partially obscure. And then October 1987 arrived, and Freddie sat them down and told them. And the sentence from the tour bus, 1 week before Knebworth, "I'm not going to be doing this forever. This is probably my last time," became, in the light of what they now knew, not the exhaustion of a touring musician at the end of a long summer, but a sentence that had been accurate in a way none of them had wanted to let themselves understand. Brian May has talked about the Knebworth moment across nearly 40 years of interviews and public appearances, and the specific quality of what he says about it has not changed significantly. He describes what he heard the sentence to John Deacon, the sentence coming off the stage with the honesty of someone not trying to manage how he sounds but simply telling what happened. He describes his response, the filter, the interpretation, the decision not to take it seriously with the same honesty. And he describes the specific quality of looking back at those moments from the position of knowing what came after. Knowing the Knebworth concert was the last one, that the sentence about not always being there was the most literal thing Freddie Mercury said in the summer of 1986, that the exhaustion in his voice coming off that stage was not only what it appeared to be. Brian May has described this as something he carries. Not as guilt, exactly, he could not have known with certainty what the signs meant, and knowing would not have changed what happened, as a kind of extended recognizing. The slow process across decades of understanding what you were hearing when you heard it. Brian May plays Knebworth on screens behind him at Queen Plus Adam Lambert concerts. He plays the Magic Tour version of his guitar parts and stands on stage with the Knebworth footage running behind him, and he has said across all the years that it never becomes routine, that the specific weight of what Knebworth was, the last one, the goodbye nobody said, the sentence nobody fully heard is present every time. He carries it, on every stage, every night. The yellow leather jacket that Freddie Mercury wore at Wembley and at Knebworth in 1986 became, after his death, one of the most recognized images in rock music, the visual shorthand for Freddie Mercury at his most powerful and most present. It was used as the symbol for the 1992 Freddie Mercury tribute concert. It appears on merchandise, on posters, in retrospectives. And the specific quality of what the yellow jacket image contains the man inside it, the summer it was worn, the sentences said at the end of it that were not fully heard, is the quality that makes it more than a costume. It is a record of a specific period. The last time Freddie Mercury performed at the scale his voice and his presence had spent 20 years building toward. He wore it twice, Wembley and Knebworth. The second time was the last time. Nobody knew it when he put it on. How much Freddie Mercury knew in the summer of 1986 about his own health is a question the historical record does not answer with complete certainty. The formal diagnosis was October 1987. But the specific nature of AIDS in the mid-1980s, the way the disease progressed, the knowledge available to someone paying attention to what was happening in his social world, the signs that a person might notice in themselves before a doctor had named them, suggests that Freddie Mercury in August 1986 was operating with some level of awareness that something was wrong, even if that awareness had not yet been confirmed. If I'm still alive, I'm not going to be doing this forever. My whole body's racked with pain. 3 sentences in ascending order of directness, all said in the same month, all absorbed and reclassified as something other than what they were. He said them. He did not press the point. He let the filter do what filters do, and then he went home. Freddie Mercury said it 3 ways in 1 month. If I'm still alive, this is probably my last time. My whole body's racked with pain, each one slightly more direct than the last. Each one absorbed and reclassified as something other than what it was, by the people closest to him, by the people who loved him most and knew him best, and had built the most comprehensive internal model of what his words meant. The filter was made of love. It still let the wrong things through. Brian May did not take it seriously. He has said this. He says it without softening it towards self-forgiveness or hardening it towards self-blame. It is simply what happened. Freddie Mercury said a sentence in the middle of an argument 1 week before the last concert, and Brian May heard it and let it go. And then Knebworth happened, the crown and the gown and the good night and sweet dreams and the helicopter and the flight home in the summer dark, and the tour ended and the year turned. And a year after that, Freddie sat them down and said the thing he had been saying in smaller ways for the entire summer of 1986. And the sentence from the tour bus, which had always been true, became undeniable. Brian May has played Knebworth on the screens behind him on dozens of stages since then. He has stood in front of audiences in stadiums and watched Freddie Mercury perform at Knebworth on the screen and played his guitar alongside the recording and has done this across nearly 40 years. He did not take it seriously when he heard it. He has been taking it seriously every night since.